Good morning. All right. So thank you all for being here this morning. You know, I have a new communications director, Mr. Gregory Joseph. And a part of what we're wanting to do is to bring me out here and come before you all and just to allow you an opportunity to have a dialogue with me. Melissa will be running a Q&A, and so I am here. Hope you all had a great weekend, holiday weekend, and a happy Father's Day in the city of New Orleans. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Melissa, and you can get us going.
Okay, all right. Mayor, I talked to a man yesterday.
All right, we need to let that be quiet.
Okay, I talked to a man yesterday. He has a home on St. Charles Avenue. He's had his vehicles broken into so many times that he hired his own armed security guard. That armed security guard was in front of his house for 2 days when she became the victim of an attempted carjacking. So this family is considering leaving New Orleans, along with other families that we've talked to, because they say crime is a crisis in New Orleans. Do you believe that crime is a crisis in New Orleans? And if not, why not? And what do you say to these families who say they want to leave New Orleans because of crime?
Sure. So in regards to a crisis, I feel like I am the crisis mayor. For 4 years, I've managed through my team and I multiple crises in the city of New Orleans, have done it with vigor, with real focus, and a manner of addressing a challenge in order to bring forth results. Crime is no different, remains a top priority for the city of New Orleans. I really refuse to accept a focus solely on law enforcement and law agencies as it relates to public safety. It has to be a holistic approach. I understand and I hear what you've shared with me in regards to this resident. And I know that this individual may not, and I'm sure he's not alone. I, too, have had my vehicles stolen. I, too, have had my cars pulled on my doors as well, no doubt about it. And I also understand that with that holistic approach is one that speaks to prevention, intervention, as well as personal responsibility. I know in the area that this gentleman lives, they also have a security district in this area. So the fact that they have a security district and then you're saying having to hire additional, right? So there's presence there. And so what we're dealing with are individuals truly in our community, in our city, that have no respect for life at all. That's what we're dealing with. We have issues with mental health, addiction, that we're dealing with in our city, and it is real. But in order to address it, it's going to take everything that we have as a community to do so, including law enforcement, but a criminal justice system that truly does work as a system. But treating root causes is something that my administration is focused on significantly. Even on Friday, having graduated the most recent cohorts of Pathways. This is a program where young people in our city that have crossed the line, that have touched the criminal justice system, and therefore are referred to programs that the city of New Orleans has stood up. Pathways is one of them. Now, over 60 of these young people have since gone through this program. What made Friday so significant? It was the largest cohort that we graduated and the largest response in terms of support systems being present at that graduation. That's treating the root cause in addition to employers, small businesses in our community that are providing access to employment as well as social skills for our young people to turn from a negative life to finding a pathway to a more successful one that rids our community of crime and violence. And so we know that the city of New Orleans saw its lowest point in terms of reduction in violent crime in our community right at the start of 2020. We also saw that like Other cities across the United States of America are dealing with the same impacts of COVID-19 and the stressors that it's placed on our community and neighborhoods and our people throughout the city of New Orleans. This is what we're saying. So not just focusing on personal responsibility, but our responsibility as well. When we see something, we say something, and we intervene as necessary. But it is a collaborative effort that will keep this city safe and make her safe, and making sure that that's sustained. NOPD has demonstrated they've made significant arrests where we've seen the impacts on the ground, but we still face challenges. But with those significant arrests, we need to ensure that the right people are not only off the street, which they're demonstrating, but they stay off the street. And that's where the system as a whole has to function in order to protect the residents of this city. And not just the man on St. Charles Avenue, but men and women and children all around the city of New Orleans, including visitors that come our way.
I'd like to ask about the City Park HMG project.
Okay.
Recently, you issued a statement in which you blamed Lakeview residents and political leaders for so-called stall tactics.
Okay.
As I understand it, the city could move forward with that project with or without their consent, so long as there's an agreement with City Park and its board. From what I understand, City Park, despite months of negotiations with the city, is still not close to agreeing to this. So my question is, why blame residents and politicians for this when, in reality, it's City Park and the city's inability to come to an agreement for this project not moving forward?
So first of all, I don't blame anyone. That's number one. I don't blame anyone. I did not blame anyone. I stated the facts. The city of New Orleans and my administration went to bat for those dollars, precious dollars, to mitigate flooding in a key area in our city, and also stood up as it relates to doing the necessary due diligence, the studies relative to how much stormwater could we actually hold should we move forward with creating a resilience district on the footprint of City Park. What was very clear is that moving forward with storing 187 million gallons of water at City Park would alleviate flooding up to 9 inches plus in people's homes, in businesses across the city. It would have an impact. 187 million gallons of storm water, green infrastructure, this city of New Orleans leading in the country at mitigating flooding because we are on the front lines of it. That's a fact. Number two, it would require a cooperative endeavor agreement to be signed by City Park, The city of New Orleans is already there. We're initiating it, meaning the flood mitigation project. But City Park's leadership has indicated that they are not wanting to sign. In addition to that, elected officials also covering that area are not in support of the project, in which they have stated publicly. So there's no blaming going on here. It's very clear. From where I stand, in regards to mitigating flooding in the city of New Orleans, in the community, a city that took on 80% of stormwater after Hurricane Katrina, and it sat. And not only that, the impacts even relative to our assets on City Park, this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. So it's not about blaming anybody. This is about wanting to move forward a project that is at 90% design. So it didn't just happen overnight. And the leadership, whether it's at the neighborhood level or at elected level, understands that this did not happen overnight. 90% design. That means time, that means planning, that means money that has gone in to holding 187 million gallons of stormwater in a community that was significantly impacted by Hurricane Katrina. And it's not a matter of if, It's a matter of when. And we have a responsibility of ensuring that we create these systems to capture drain water, in addition to our focus on gray infrastructure as well. So we can't just be on gray. We have to be on green, we have to be on blue, and we also have to ensure that it is a system that works in conjunction with our HISR system that was recently turned back over to Orleans Parish. So we're on the front lines of climate change. We don't have a luxury of saying no, in my opinion, especially when we know the impacts of other communities around the country, but also our ability to not only receive and advocate for federal dollar, but wanting to make sure that we're putting that dollar to work in areas that we know that are needed the most. And this particular area of the city is one of them. And it's not about blaming anyone. You look at the data, you look at the impacts post-Katrina, you look at the impacts, and you can see them pre and post. This is a need in our city. It's not about blaming anyone.
Okay, I'll let David follow up, then I'll go to Travis, then I go to you, and I'll get you in the back.
Is the city continuing to engage City Park in a negotiation for a CEA? And if so, do you expect there to be an agreement anytime soon?
Well, I have, and I do plan to. I've spoken with the executive director previously that gave me no indication that she would be recommending not signing it. After this public meeting, and I've gotten the word, oh, we're not signing. I'm doing additional outreach as well to see if the board, and appeal to that board to have their executive director sign a cooperative endeavor agreement that will allow for us to hold stormwater on City Park's campus, 187 million gallons of water, should we be faced with rainfall and or hurricane coming our way. It makes good sense. So yes, I will continue to advocate for the use of these dollars, because this is why we've gotten them allocated in the first place, meaning from the federal government, we're a repetitive loss city, and this is about mitigating flooding due to what occurred by Hurricane Katrina and the failures of our levees. And so I will continue to do that, but I've also indicated, my team and I, to the federal partners as well as the state partners, I will not turn that money back. Will not. I've been talking about New Orleans, that's on deadline for 4 years now. And so we have a responsibility, and in doing so, I will not turn it back. I will pivot and allocate those dollars to other projects in our city, and those other projects are flood mitigation projects in our city. But again, this is about making sure that we're focusing on areas of the city that have had a history of flooding. And Lakeview is one of those cities, one of those neighborhoods. We know that in our city.
Travis.
Yeah, I have like a two-part question.
Okay.
If you could just walk us through the incident the other night at the Fillmore. I know that you all released the statement, but just in your words, if you can walk us through what happened. And then the second part is, you have executive protection. Were they there with you when that happened?
Sure. So I'm going to give you a little bit. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit. I went into the ladies' room. So yes, I did have executive protection with me. Both of my team members that were present were male. They did not go into the restroom with me. They were outside. Upon going into the restroom, I saw a young woman who was looking for something. And I said, "What are you looking for?" And I began to look and help her find. She says, "I lost my glasses. A woman hit me in the head. Mayor Cantrell, do you see a knot?" And I said, "Actually, I do see it growing." I said, "I do." So what's going on? So she indicated that she had saw something, and she had went to speak to this woman about it, and the woman knocked her in the head, knocked her glasses off. I then waited with this young woman, calming her down to say, "No, although she hit you, which is inappropriate behavior, no doubt about it, that is an assault, but let's deal with it appropriately. Let's not retaliate. No need for you to because that will lead to something else. We don't need that. We're not doing that. And once the woman exited the stall with her daughter, I was able to speak with the daughter. I was told that there were some issues with the daughter. So initially, and what you saw in that video was the initial, I think, interaction from the woman coming out of the stall and myself. And when you are having an incident and you're working to de-escalate, some of the first footage you will see is escalation, right? Because you're bringing it down. And unfortunately, you weren't able to see that. But it was talking with this woman, talking her down. And as a result of that, she ended up sharing with me issues that she was having with her 14-year-old daughter that night, how she had spent some of her last dollars to buy tickets to that concert for her daughter to have something to do, how she was feeling a little disrespected by her daughter after she had demonstrated kind of care, and how she had to go to work at 5:30 in the morning. And so she began to cry, and I was there listening to her. And so that was it, was able to de-escalate. She apologized. She wanted to know if I knew the woman that she had hit in the head. I told her I did not. She wanted to find her to apologize for that behavior, but she was unable to do that. But at the end of the day, it's just a constant reminder of how people are really dealing with so much that they carry, and the mental health of our people. That has to be a top priority, and I know that it is for me. So for me, what it did was underscore the work that we're doing within my administration, focusing on youth and families, as well as behavioral health and interventions, so that we can really meet people where they are and create these spaces of dialogue for especially our parents who need help just sharing and working through it, because it's not easy. It really isn't easy. I was thinking about a little quote I received on Mother's Day, and it said, parenting is like a walk in the park, Jurassic Park. And so, and as a parent, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty scary sometimes. And so that was just an incident that I found myself in. And my mother always said, I'm always the one, always intervening. I've always been that way. But definitely being cautious. But I feel like I know how to work with people, and I know how to talk with people, and I know how to listen. And it was evident on that evening. And so we left with her taking a selfie and getting a hug and getting a kiss. What I hate, though, is that I did not get her contact information for proper follow-up, because there's absolutely a need for that in her family and for herself and for her daughter.
Mayor, I want to ask you about the JIRR FEMA extension efforts that I know bipartisan now in Congress to try to get an extension on that money that is due to be spent by next year.
23.
But what I want to understand better is why this money hasn't been spent. We know that there were agreements in 2010, in 2015, to try to cut through the red tape to get this money spent to coordinate Sewage and Water Board and DPW and get all that on the same page. And, here we are, and we're still only halfway spent. What's changed? What can still change to get this money spent in time, or are we just going to end up in the same thing over and over again?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the question. And the dollars allocated to the city, federal dollars, and meaning allocated, not money given to the city in our bank account. This is FEMA dollars, which is cost reimbursed. Just full disclosure, because that seems to be a narrative as well. Money in the bank sitting there, that's not accurate. However, the federal dollars that's tied to this $2.4 billion is not just joint infrastructure work either. So your statement on it is not accurate. It's not just JIRR, okay? It's many things. even green infrastructure, it's many different things, green infrastructure, municipal auditorium, the municipal and traffic, many different things. But what I will say is this. 4 years ago, and this is not new information, I've been saying this at every press conference I have, especially on infrastructure. Less than 1% of those dollars were spent 4 years ago. Today, I stand and it's over 50%. So the greatest spend has been over the past 4 years, no doubt about it. And we're on a path to continuing to push projects to notice to proceed, which has to happen in order for those dollars to stay with that project. Now, this is if we're sticking with the current deadline in place now, 2023. Okay. When we came in 4 years ago, the priority was to take that deeper dive and to find out exactly where are the bottlenecks, what's going on. And it's an onion, and I'm not peeling it all right now, but what I will say, a couple things. It was taking, in some instances, 12 months plus for projects to go through an archaeological review, which are necessary. This is federal money. There are guidelines assigned to it that we have to do our due diligence in order for the work to happen. So that's just one example. So getting in, finding out that bottleneck, then we said to FEMA, it's taking this long. We know that this has a direct impact on us getting these projects out of the door. Can you fund an archaeologist for the city of New Orleans for us to house on site? They said yes. That cut over 12 and sometimes 18 months down to 30 days. And in some cases, even shorter than that, anywhere from 15 to 40 days, 45 days, that process was cut down. So that's significant. And there were many other issues as well in terms of them going out to bid and the scopes and that sort of thing, and re-engineering and wanting to make sure that, we did do the dig once, and we knew that we were opening up these streets that hadn't been opened up for 100 years, and also projects that were being designed but were not being fully designed to incorporate other streets that may have been impacted on a particular block, if you will. So we wanted to make sure that not only did we allocate or spend the federal dollar, but we also matched it with some bond money and the like. So if we were going into that neighborhood and FEMA work only covered 2 blocks, then we can go ahead and say, cover the next 2 because it made sense and the needs were still in that community. So there are many different issues that we found that we had to tackle these problems, and also was just getting the state to work with us and FEMA so that they could front some of the dollar so that we can move the projects forward, and then when we're reimbursed by FEMA, then that's a revolver. So the state allowed us to create a revolving fund that would move these projects out of the door sooner rather than later. There have been multiple things that we've had to do to get from less than 1% to over 50% of these dollars being spent. So we're doing the right thing, but we're also learning lessons and we're getting better as well. Lessons learned, meaning you have so gets to all of these projects happening at one time, which is also unprecedented, not only in our city, but in the United States of America, meaning a city with this much federal resources happening at any given time. So there are going to be lessons learned. And we've learned those lessons. We've pivoted. We've strengthened through the ordinance, through our bidders ordinance, putting more teeth in there, contractor accountability and the like, as well as making sure that project management, we're gearing up or beefing up our capacity there. So you ask why, asking right now, because we're wanting to get ahead of it, which we've already started talking. We've been talking about this long time with FEMA, with our unified partners. But where we are now is that we're starting to see either no responses to bids, one response to a bid, or the bid comes back or the project back where it's exceeded our budget anywhere from 40% to 89%. So this is a trifecta, I call it. It has impact in terms of the Great Resignation, in terms of that human capacity that you need to do the job, inflation we're seeing, as well as supply chain. So this trifecta is having a real impact, what we're seeing, on projects that we're having to get out of the door, but also we're going to have to make some really tough decisions because these projects are coming back. The budget's exceeding us, like I said, over 89%.
So what trajectory do you think we're on here? Because you talked about everything really improving, but now you're talking about these challenges.
It's a balance.
What is a reasonable deadline to get this done? Because now you've got Congress trying to get an extension
Yep.
from FEMA. What do you think is reasonable if you can keep working the way you've been working to get these projects done?
Sure. So what I will say is there's a couple of unknowns there, right, which speaks to where we find ourselves with the Great Resignation, with inflation, right, and supply chain issues. So I can't tell, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. But what I will say, if we can we're at 23, we know August 23, I would hope for an additional 2-year period, simply because when you think about where we are, not just New Orleans, but where we are in this country, on those 3 things I just mentioned, the trifecta, which also with the impacts on the ground here in terms of our projections, financial projections, and with the infusion of federal dollars, we said we know that we're going to be living with and through this pandemic, the impacts of it through 25. So we have all of these things that we have to look at, and that 2025 trajectory based on the GDP, I think that would be something that would be appropriate. It doesn't mean that it will shift, because it could. But just based on what we're dealing with right now and what I'm seeing, I would hope for it to be well past 2025.
Mayor, Bywater residents are growing pretty frustrated, been frustrated with what's been going on with the naval support activity with fires, vagrants, a recent shootout. The city apparently has some money from the Navy to redevelop that property that we may have missed a window on. Is there any prospect of any more federal help to redo that structure? And what do you see as the long-term plan, long-term and short-term, in terms of securing it and redeveloping it?
Sure. So one of the things when you deal with corporations, right, in which we partner with a corporation that has the long-term lease of that particular site, the corporation has the responsibility to secure it, as well as to bring it back into commerce. The scope of that project, so first of all, I absolutely understand where the residents of Bywater and the dealings that they've had with this particular site, no doubt about it. Even the city of New Orleans, continuous sweeps. Our most recent was over a month ago. There will be one happening this week. We go in there with all hands on deck, from the health department, from housing, of course, NOPD, fire, you name it, code, and you name it. And we're going to do that again this week. The last time we were there, I believe it was about 15 individuals that were on site. That was a smaller number than we've seen in the past. We'll have another count when we go in this week. But the responsibility is absolutely on the corporate partner. We have made it very clear that he needs to ensure that this site is secured 24/7. We have also worked with the developer in securing federal resources from HUD, because the scope of the project is to be redeveloped as a mixed use site with housing attached to it, and affordable housing as well. And so the application, as I understand, is moving through that federal process. It is as I understand, really likely that federal dollar will be associated with the project. Projects like this or sites like this truly do require a multi-layered approach in terms of financing, and that's the biggest issue, financing this particular project. And so while I know that we're supposed to, or the developer is supposed to receive a green light from HUD within the next couple of months, I'm told. And so until then, we're asking that the property is secured 24/7, and we're not going to let up. But this is something that I know the residents have complained about. It's something that the New Orleans Police Department has complained about, and we're going to ensure, again, that we hold the developers' feet to the fire in regards to securing that particular site. So I'm expecting some change there.
Since it's an ongoing problem, is the developer, and is the developer Joe Yeager?
The developer is Joe Yeager.
Is he in default of his development agreement? Is there any stipulation that requires him to secure this property so it's not a nuisance to the neighborhood?
Well, in the agreement, there is a requirement for him to secure the site. He has had individuals on the site, but we're wanting it to be 24/7 and with proper, I can't even think of the name of the apparatus that will go over these, the windows, the open spaces. And so the equipment, the materials, I'm told, have been ordered, and we should expect that this site be properly boarded up, as well as 24/7 coverage. And knowing how large this site is and the need for it to return into commerce was one of the ways or reasons why we entered into a lease agreement with hopes for it to facilitate its redevelopment.
Brittany?
Mayor, what is your response to homeowners who say that the city is not just experiencing the worst crime in decades, but also issues with stable utilities, issues with trash collection and the street lights that are out, or really just the road projects in general?
Sure. So what do I say to homeowners that are experiencing the various challenges that we're faced with by living in the city of New Orleans? I say that, one, we have, you mentioned something, there was something you said we've experienced the worst something, which I don't agree with.
The worst crime in decades.
Okay, in decades, no, okay, no, that's not accurate. I don't know if you were here when we were experiencing almost 500 murders a year. That's not where we are right now at all, and the city of New Orleans is not on track to being back there in the 95s, no time at all, in terms of what we're seeing. But what I will say is that challenges that we're faced with are real. And we're going to continue to, one, ask for their patience as we address the challenges. You mentioned infrastructure. This is the first time that we've ever seen infrastructure investments in the city of New Orleans in over 100 years. And so, no, it's not going to be painless, but it's absolutely necessary. And the fact that we're seeing these projects happening in the streets of the city of New Orleans is just that, it's progress. So I will say that investments are being made where they live, and that will have an immediate impact on their daily quality of life if they just continue to bear with it. Bear with it. I know it's not easy, but it's necessary because we need these projects to be done in the city of New Orleans. We have on one end talking about a deadline to get them done. Money will go back. We don't want that. We need these projects to be fully implemented throughout the city of New Orleans, and it's a testament to the hard work of the men and women of this administration and of this city, because this didn't just happen. We're making sure that we are doing the work, and we're doing it in a manner that will allow us to leverage additional federal dollar to therefore impact our infrastructure in the city that speaks to utilities, other utilities, that speaks also to housing, that speaks to transportation. You know, all of these things are very important and are priorities of the people who live here, and I'm sure those who you're representing this morning.
But with the lack of funding to departments like the street department, doesn't that create an extra challenge in getting those projects done?
So anytime you have budgets that are frozen of departments that you're also asking to do the work, absolutely it has an impact. It has an impact on our ability to do the work in a timely manner and on a consistent basis. But more importantly, it has an impact on the morale of the men and women that we depend on to continue to serve in these capacities, to therefore do the job that we benefit from. So yes, it does have an impact, but I am happy to say that based upon the work and with the New Orleans City Council, that these areas or budgets that have been frozen are no longer going to experience that. And that gives me hope, because I'm focused again on the men and women that we depend on to do the job and that we need to do the job.
I'll take Mike, and then after that, if Kate or Matt, you have a question, then we're gonna wrap it up. So go ahead, Mike.
Mayor, the recent New Orleans Crime Coalition poll showed the lowest level of satisfaction in the police department in the history of that poll at 33%. We've also seen at least one council member call for resignation of Police Chief Sean Ferguson. So it's kind of a compound question. First of all, what is your level of confidence both in the chief and the police department as a whole? And then furthermore, we know the police department troop strength is hovering at about 1,000. That's another modern era low with no end in sight in that turning around, certainly not in 2022 at the rate of attrition versus hiring. So first of all, your level of confidence in the police department and the chief, and then what can be done to, clearly do more with fewer police officers?
Okay, so as it relates to my confidence in the New Orleans Police Department, I'm extremely confident of not only within the women and men of the NOPD, but of the superintendent that I brought forth in January of 2019. Very confident there. As it relates to the poll that you're referencing, what I find is that over 50% of those respondents were very much positive relative to the New Orleans Police Department. That's important. In addition to that, over 70% of those respondents said that they felt safe in their neighborhoods. That's telling as well, where they live, where their children are, how they go about. That's what was revealed in that same survey that you're referencing. But what I really appreciate the most is that there is real synergy and alignment of those respondents to what has been recommended by my administration relative to public safety in the city of New Orleans. And so with the second allocation of ARP dollars coming to the city of New Orleans in its full complement, something that I worked very hard to secure for this city, and glad that it's coming our way, but it's heavily, heavily focused on public safety in a comprehensive approach, over $42 million in areas that the public, the respondents, said that they would like to see those dollars go. And so there's alignment there that speaks to equipment, that speaks to training, tools, you name it. It also speaks to, one, our ability to retain as well as to recruit. But when I listen to my officers, I listen to them heavily when they talk about retention. Retention. So the retention initiative that was proposed by my administration hopes to move forward, that was aligned with this second allocation, where hopes to be able to move that forward, because it does speak to what I'm hearing from my officers, and meeting them where they are with some additional resources and tools in their toolbox to do the job, but heavily on retention. And I will say on the recruitment side, we have seen, and I've graduated more academy classes than in the past 15 years. And so I believe that we're still on a good path towards recruitment, especially when we know what's happening across the United States of America relative to law enforcement. The city of New Orleans is emerging as that department of one that has not only effective or efficient training, we have tools and investments that we're putting forth to ensure that our officers have the best of the best. We have training facilities that's coming online. These are all good things that officers want to have across the country, but that we do have in the city of New Orleans. And so I believe that with an effective recruitment campaign, and one that I've put $1 million of Wisner money towards with the Police and Justice Foundation, so that we can really double down on our efforts of marketing, but around not just recruitment, but also retention, because we definitely need to recruit, but recruit right here in the city of New Orleans, and that truly is what sets us apart from other departments around the country.
What do I just follow up, that last academy class that you were there for the graduation was 8 officers.
Yep.
I believe it's more than 40 left the department.
Yeah, but I have graduated over 13. So while you've seen and you're zoning in on one of the smallest, it's absolutely one of the smallest based on what we're seeing across the country.
But the
Because
numbers
people-
are, and it's gonna be a net loss in 2022, how does the city and the police department deal with the shrinking number of officers?
Sure, we deal with it by focusing on retention, retaining the officers that we have. That's why you're speaking on it in the first place. When you talk about recruitment versus retention, we have to continue to keep the officers that we have that have demonstrated time and time again that they're willing to put it all on the line to protect and serve this community. And they continue to do the job, they continue to engage, and what I want to do is meet them where they are with incentives to keep them with the New Orleans Police Department. It's retention.
Yeah, so with offshore wind poised to come to Louisiana, what do you see as the city's role when it comes to wind energy? And what are you doing?
I did not really hear you. I'm sorry.
So with offshore wind
Okay.
poised to come to Louisiana, what do you see the city's role in the wind energy industry kind of, and what are we doing to prepare for that?
Sure. So the city of New Orleans, we're leaders in this space, and I really wish that you all would own that fact, especially since we're not only on the front lines of climate change, we're on the front lines of renewable energy platforms, and windmills are being built right here in the city of New Orleans. GE, right out on our Michoud campus, NASA Michoud campus, and it's so exciting because it's happening in our city. And these windmills are going all around the world, but they're being built here. And the city of New Orleans has also demonstrated that we are in a great position based on our geography to also stand up windmills in our efforts to combat climate change. This is the right thing to do, and it's the right time to do it, and the right city to actually do it in.
All right, Matt, we're gonna close out with you.
Yeah, Mayor, last week, a city council committee failed to back surveillance ordinance.
Yeah.
That's supported by your police department. Do you think you can get that through the full council? And, if it does pass, what benefits would it actually provide? Would it actually reduce crime?
Well, I think the New Orleans Police Department have spoken very clearly on the fact that this added tool in their toolbox that was taken away has had an impact on the investigative practices. Any tools that they say that they need that can improve public safety should be a priority, and especially given and focusing on a body that has that authority to approve such ordinances before them. And so it's unfortunate, especially when public safety is the top priority, for recommendations that have been offered by the men and women that make the ultimate sacrifice to protect and serve are not met with support. And so I think it's a lack of support that has been demonstrated, and it's unfortunate.
All right, thank you all for coming. Y'all have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your week.
All right.
So I don't get to have a great week. Thank back.
Have a great week.
Thank you all.